everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll that 5-star. Second verse, same as the first. So next in the Mahoyo collab servants, this is where I normally say that we talk about a servant's real-life history, folklore, their lore and fate, their mechanics, and more. And we will do some of that for today's SSR caster, Alice KUONJI, but since she's a collab character, that's going to be a lot more limited. You know, normally we have a format that works because fate's on historical characters or concepts or whatever. With collabs to other type moonworks, it's less so. It's less about that. And also, since she's from the same source as Aoko Awazaki, which was our previous Wanted episode, I'm not just going to repeat myself. I'm not going to, pull... That would be clever of me, I guess, but it's not the quality we want to do, so I'm not just going to pull the script and audio from the previous one. I can have you watch 2 videos instead of 1, in fact. So we'll be summarizing some of the shared details when we get in here, but that's that. So, that means we are jumping immediately to lore. And Alice KUONJI comes from the same source as Aoko, which is Mahotsuke no Yoru, Witch of the Holy Night, commonly abbreviated Mahoyo. I expect it'll be abbreviated Mahoyo all further down the line. Anyway, it started as a novel Nasu wrote in 1996, but it went unpublished until they developed a visual novel version at Type Moon, released in 2012, and updated with the remaster in 2022. Alice has fewer cameos than Aoko, mostly mentioned in asides in Melty Blood and Requiem, and mostly what we got from here is stuff from the original Mahoyo. I also have to be careful, just me personally, using only her given name because Alice is also Nursery Rhymes Master and Fate Extra, and that's thematically related but not textually related, so sometimes I write her full name, and that's why, because I feel like I need to be careful, or more specific anyway. But Alice KUONJI is a witch, which is technically a different species than humans. It's one of those urban fantasy settings. They seem closely related to fairies. They're a kind of folkloric being which is tied to nature, but also imply their nature changes as human civilization evolves. There's another character descended from witches in Mahoyo who's described as being linked to quote-unquote soot witches, for instance, which is groups of them that sprung up from the industrialization area. So, there's that. Note that witches can fall and become human, but this is considered a great disgrace, and the magecraft will no longer associate with them. Like fairies, witches seem to be able to normally reproduce without needing mates, but they can fall in love with humans, so this is supposed to damage their soul. Now, witches use magecraft of the witchcraft style. They are, magecraft users, even if they are not humans. Though not everybody who employs witchcraft is actually a witch. Witchcraft is a thaumaturgical school, a foundation of magecraft, which is separate from being a witch, just that witches developed that school and use it. But witches helped found the Clock Tower's Department of Botany, which is also linked to witchcraft, and is named Yumina after the witch that founded it. Though witches are no longer directly associated with a clock tower, they were once a part of the organization. Yumina is also Alice's ancestor, source of the pure-blooded witches of the MEINSTER bloodline, and is also the first magician, the possessor of the first magic. I don't know if chronologically Yumina's the first, but they're the possessor of the first magic. What exactly the first magic does isn't known, but it seems to be related to the ideas of denial of nothingness, which can cross the boundary between death and life. Basically, very philosophical and very, lean description, but seems to be related to, rejecting ideas that, the world thinks are outright impossible. It's also related to the generation of ether clumps, which are little bits of unmixed ether, which can be shaped by the magus, and thus some other stuff, but it's not, widely understood anymore because Yumina is canonically deceased, though has living descendants. Alice's ploys are a magecraft system which is based on Yumina's first magic. They're a form of familiar which is made from ether clumps, but is based on fairy tales and stories, making them, quote-unquote illusions, phantasms, not governed by physics. So they're not weak to conventional weapons, but they're weak to fabled weaknesses, and basically Alice herself, as a witch, has the same rules. Ash the Savior uses a similar system of magecraft when she condenses stories into books and then summons phenomena from stories, so that might be vaguely related to the first magic, or it might just be, she created a system which is similar to the application of it. But it does mean that, Ash is kind of a witch, and thus Morgan also does some witchy stuff, and Baobanshi, and I think it works out with her, Link being a fairy. Now, despite being deceased, Yumina did make the Great Three ploys, which have been inherited by Alice KUONJI, Flat Snark, Wonder Snatch, and Thames Troll. these are all related to various names and ideas from fairy stories, and also a lot of Lewis Carroll, but we'll come back to that. For her actual, in-universe backstory, Alice is the daughter of a Mainster witch and the eldest son of the KUONJI family, who are supposed to be quite wealthy. He met Miss Mainster while studying abroad, likely England. They don't actually, I think, explicitly state that, but I think that makes sense. Anyway, they fell in love despite knowing their daughter would be a witch. Alice's mother is described as, a little bit of a girly pop, a little bit of an airhead. But as you might expect from a folklore-using mage, she was also a fan of pop culture, and Alice is explicitly named after Alice in Wonderland. Unfortunately, it is said that a Mainster witch should not fall in love with the father of her children, as the deeper the love, the more intense the tragedy. And this is separate from the normal damage that a witch does to themselves. It seems to be that the Mainster witches, descendants of Yumina, don't follow the same rules that other witches might. For instance, I don't really put too much in the notes here, but we know a little bit about some other witches through Berogut's backstory, because his mother is supposed to be a grime witch who, lives in the woods and stuff. Now, Mainster witches can reproduce with humans, probably due to being related to Yumina the magician, but it's said that Alice's mother broke some taboo by marrying Mr. KUONJI and naming Alice, and so she passed away when Alice was young. Alice's father is still alive in Mahoyo. He's just abroad in England, or just traveling on business a lot. So yes, Alice's mother violated some sort of taboos of the Mainster clan, but, Alice is still a witch regardless. And Alice KUONJI is Aoko's magecraft tutor in Mahoyo, teaching her about magus stuff. She's she's acquaintances, I should say. She likes, possibly, works with, at least definitely, both Awazaki sisters. Aoko is described later as her one friend. But Alice is already a perfected magus since age 16. She operates in the classical magi way. She has basically no close combat potential at all. She does everything via familiars. She's, distant from modern society and stuff. She tries to keep all the things spooking and going on. Her personality appears to be kind of like a cool Ojo type, being a rich girl. But Alice KUONJI is actually very serious about being a mage. Her everyday activities are just because witches need to blend in. And she's quite solitary and isolated. But she has a, creative dreamer side. Like I said, Aoko's her one friend. And she goes to a fancy all-girls school, unlike Aoko, who goes to normal high school. And it is canonical, based on her appearance in FGO, that she does not age. She looks the same at age 17 as she does at around 29, I believe, is when the Mahoyo, what her age should be in the Mahoyo event, I should say. Okay, so, mechanics. Alice is a 5-star caster, which, yeah, that's pretty right. She's pretty good at that shit. She is higher HP, lower attack. Remember what I said about close combat, with a QQ deck. That's 2 quick, 2 arts, 1 buster. If you're not following that and you happen to be looking away from your screen. High hits, average NP gain. She's 0.51. So Alice is one of those servants who adjusts some stuff between Ascensions, but not having a full swap thing. So in Ascension 1 and 2, she's Chaotic Good, Human Attribute. Her NP is labeled Flat Snark. In Ascension 3, she's Chaotic Evil, Earth Attribute, and her NP is labeled Wander Snatch. They have the same effect, just different animations. FGO doesn't really delineate too much. That might be in the event if we see both forms, but it seems like Ascension 1 and 2 are the normal Alice as she appears in Mahoyo, and Ascension 3 is kind of the folklore, the appearance of the Mainster witch, a cold-hearted and serious enemy using her maximum powers. She does do that a couple of times in the Mahoyo story, get serious, get real, as they say, but I wouldn't say that it's quote-unquote her, default personality. But she is a witch who is a supernatural existence, so, being attribute of the earth and that kind of thing makes sense. In either form, she is AoE quick, pretty cool for casters. She gets sure hit for 1 turn first, 30% damage up versus the human trait, not attribute, also 1 turn first. Gives all enemies terror, a 1-time 3-turn chance to stun, 60%, and a 20% crit down for 3. Overcharge effect is bonus damage versus the human attribute. First skill is 10 to 20% arts and quick up for 3. It's also 30% battery, and also gives the party 20-30% NP gain up for 3. Pretty comprehensive. Second skill is 20-30% attack and defense up on self for 3, which is already pretty good, but it's a further 10 to 20% on forest, city, or darkness field for both, so that's a 50% def up and a 50% attack up. Pretty solid. Now, her third skill is really fun. So Alice has a passive which gives her 13 Robin Rondo stacks in a battle. They don't really come back. If you restart a fight because you wipe, you get them back, but otherwise they're just there. But so long as she has these stacks, she can use her third skill. She gets a special substitution status, which is an anti-purge defense for 1 time 2 turns. But it doesn't count as a buff, so it cannot be buff removed or buff blocked. But it consumes a Robin stack. Also, this skill is a 10 to 20% battery and is a minimum cooldown of 2 turns. Passives are Territory Creation A, Item Creation A, so, better arts, better debuff chance. Her Folklore Defense B, this gives her a passive where she gets 400 damage cut versus Noble Phantasm and dots only. Note this is per dot stack, no cumulative, so she can negate a decent amount of damage, but usually not all of it. She also has one more unique passive. This gives her 5 stacks of an Instant Death Guts for 1k HP. So if she's instantly killed, she revives with 1k HP. Except I'm pretty sure it's actually 3k HP because she gains an extra 2k HP from any guts that triggers on her. This also gives her 13 Robin stacks. So yeah, no, Alice is particularly immune to certain types of damage, which includes instant death. Now, it should be pretty obvious from her mob-only bonus damage. Alice is a farmer. She has, 70% battery in her on her own. She has multiple steroids, which can get pretty big, 50% attack up. And this helps offset the low damage of casters, and her NP has 7 hits. Alice juices up, she kills. Anybody not killed, probably sent to Stunland. That's a 30% 30% terror chance. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm leaving that in. I don't have time for that edit. Anyway, she has a guaranteed sure hit, so oddball mobs can't evade the damage, but she can also work in fights with bosses because she's got very unique defensive mechanics. Her Robin Rondo can dodge NPs basically every 2 turns up to 13 times per fight. She has a special immunity to instant kill, basically, great for picking on assassins. I mean, it's not an immunity because she still dies, but she gets 3k HP back at least, so, whatever, man. She's got resistance to dots. Very multifaceted servant. Very, very useful for a variety of things. Now, who do you pair her with? Well, she's quick, so this is going to be another win for the Scotty system. Regular Scotty, can balance her out, increasing her damage output, complementing her NP charge. Since Alice only has 1 Buster, Summer Scotty is probably not recommended, but you can consider some budget supports, including Zhang Ju, who is a caster who also has a quick NP, and can provide buffs, and also might set the field to forest. He's got an 80% buff chance to set it to forest, so you can use that to really maximize Alice's damage output. For CEs, she is a farmer. You're going to want to put more juice, especially because she is a caster. Casters naturally have low damage multipliers. Black Grail or its equivalent can juice her even more. She starts with 50% herself, and you can probably find at least 50% just by using your friend's Scotty, as we say. But you can skip the Scotties entirely and try a 50% charge CE like Cherry Icicle is a hip new one. Golden Sumo. Golden Sumo, Golden Sumo, Golden Sumo. I hear if you say Golden Sumo 3 times in the comments, you might summon Funo Tyson. But in general, yeah. Give her 50% because she can do 50s. Don't waste the Robin Rondo stacks on farming if you don't need the extra battery. Use that for cementing your looping and stuff. And just make sure you're amping up that damage. Generally, I would say quick damage, NP damage, attack up. And that takes us to the famed other stuff. Now, as a collab character, not a brand new story character, Alice thankfully has pretty old school requirements for Ascension. Her skills do require Fistfuls of Void Dust, though, and 72 Obsidian 9s per skill, so that's Trixie. Did I say 9s and not knives? You know what I mean. You've seen them. Similarly, banners are basically the same as Aoko. She's going to be up now during the Mahoyo collab. She should be in rotation at or around New Year's this year, so that could be Thanksgiving, back to school, New Year's, Christmas, anything. Truly. And she'll show up in weekly caster and Grandul caster campaigns, and she'll probably have another raid up in JP this year because of the Mahoyo movie. That's all we got there. And that is about it. Hope everyone is enjoying the event and their Aoko and Alice banners. Check out Wanted Aoko for more on that one, and more backstory about Mahoyo. I'm thinking, I wrote a note here to apologize about it possibly being late. I don't think it's going to be late, but I am going to apologize. Normally, I would plug listening to our podcast, Let's Tech FGO, if you want more information on the event and seeing how we're doing. But I'm actually recording this while, starting to feel a little sick. And so that's why I was, worried it would be delayed. But I don't think this is going to be delayed. I think the podcast is going to be delayed. So we'll figure that one out. Thanks for all that, steez, everybody. But check that out. And, of course, remember to do all the usual stuff. Like the video, leave a comment. Subscribe, obviously, ring the bell, join our Discord. That was the thing I about, was me trying to remember that one. Consider joining the channel memberships, and, of course, consider supporting us on Patreon, where you can get the video a little early, and other steez, and I will give a more specific shout-out to patrons after the musical outro. And before we go, a special shout out to all of our patrons, but especially Adam DeHarp, Blackest OG, Call Me Zed, Carlos, Dragon, JW9000, Rise of Genji, Rogarman, and Charvor. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon.